The crypto market is by no means as easy to understand and trade as it used to be. In the past, it was like this. Just throw money into any altcoin and you'll be profitable in a bull run. Currently, very few projects are actually outperforming Bitcoin. That's a huge problem, and you really have to take a closer look. You have to consider how and which altcoins you buy. And today we simply have to talk about a few altcoins that I am currently buying before we head into July. And these are all relatively new projects, but some of them have already proven themselves. That's why this video is extremely important for people who are still looking for solid altcoins. I promise you, you'll find them here. First of all, it has to be said that Bitcoin is currently in a bit of a price discovery phase, but that's mainly because we're closely following the M2 money supply. Since we're following the M2 money supply so closely, we're now in this corrective phase. But this also indicates that in the coming weeks, we are really heading towards $120,000 to $125,000 for Bitcoin, because we will simply continue to follow the M2 money supply. So everything we've seen so far has just been a solid correction. And despite these somewhat uncertain times, we're still seeing inflows of $380 million into the Bitcoin spot ETFs. We can see this with Bitcoin. With Ethereum, we've also seen inflows of 11 million, which in comparison is of course not as large. But we see that even when retail investors are uncertain, institutions are buying actively. This is also illustrated by a chart like this one. Here we have 100 companies that now hold Bitcoin, that are now invested in Bitcoin. The largest of these companies are, of course, in the USA. We are simply seeing this institutional demand. Companies are getting involved here and so on. It still needs to go much higher. This needs to be expanded further because companies will make sure that they can also offload their Bitcoin. The question at this point, of course, is how much will the altcoins get out of this? In any case, we can see that the tide has turned here and that altcoins no longer just skyrocket like they did in the past. Nowadays, it's more the case that individual projects perform well, but not the entire altcoin sector. Especially in this regard, it's important to note that altcoins can only really perform well once interest rates are lowered. Because whenever interest rates have risen, altcoins have performed poorly. Altcoins have only been able to perform at all when interest rates were falling or low. And that's also something I've shown you several times before. The risk currently doesn't lie with the altcoins, not with the crypto market, because we still have such a tight monetary policy here. As soon as that changes, altcoins will get a bigger piece of the pie. But that will definitely change this year as well. Still, there are already a few projects performing well right now, and we're going to talk about a few projects where I would currently say, hey, these are projects you can get into now. I'm super optimistic about this. First, there's the project ENA, also known as Ethena. I really like this project because it's a project that's dominating the entire stablecoin market. And stablecoins have become incredibly important for the market by now. They're also growing every day. A lot of capital flows in there, and there's a lot of trading going on. The advantage is there's a lot of revenue coming in, and that's exactly what makes a project like this so valuable. With Ethena, we simply have the advantage that they sometimes generate $6 million in just 24 hours, purely from revenue fees. And with that, Ethena is roughly on the same level as Circle. The only difference is Circle is valued much higher. Ethena has a market cap of about 2 billion, and compared to the fees, that's way too little. I've shown you this down here, because per year we can achieve revenues that match our market cap. If we then see buybacks, etc., we can clearly see that this thing is massively undervalued. We can also put it into perspective here. Google's revenue amounts to $350 billion. Google has a market cap of $2.14 trillion. That means the valuation is 6 or 7 times higher than the annual revenue. And with Ethena, we're definitely still way out of balance here. Plus, this is a crypto project, so there's even more potential behind it and so on. That's why, in my opinion, this is a solid project and I've invested heavily in it. I'm very confident here, especially because they're already dominating the stablecoin market. I'm sure this will continue in the future because we're also seeing huge interest in stablecoins from the US. To me, it looks like we've just seen our local bottom here. Here we had our bottom, and then in my opinion, we had our local bottom here. And from here, I expect that we'll rise a bit for now. Accordingly, I've also bought in a bit here recently, accumulated a little. This zone is becoming interesting, as well as this zone. If we break through here, we'll set new all-time highs. This zone will also become interesting again, but overall, it's a solid thing, has good numbers and facts, and that's what we're relying on today. The next project is Sky. And Sky was just mentioned as well in the context of projects that dominate the stablecoin market. And here Sky is also right at the very top. We have really massive TVL here with people staking, people using Sky Money stablecoins and so on. What I really like here is simply the fact that they've built themselves up very strongly in terms of revenue. From a purely technical chart perspective, it's all a bit hard to assess here because these are all brand new projects today. But even here, we can clearly see that we're in an upward trend. We're constantly forming higher highs, so we're definitely in an uptrend here. You can also see this trend channel. We're building up here step by step. As long as we don't clearly lose this trend channel, we'll remain in a bullish uptrend here as well. Here too, it's a project where I have to say, with this market cap of $1.7 billion, it's undervalued in relation to the revenue system. And as you can already see today, a lot in this video is based on revenue and real volume, because I don't want to present you with something like Cardano, where in the end we don't have good numbers in the background compared to the market cap. I prefer to look for projects now that are strong in terms of TVL, strong in terms of revenue, that have a solid foundation on-chain wise, where things just look good on-chain, so that you simply have a better risk-reward ratio here. So Sky is also a good project that I would add to the portfolio before we head into July. And then we have AVE. AAVE is already more well known. Aave is the only project that was also around in the last cycle. Why did I choose a project like Aave? Because Aave is a complete DeFi project, and the DeFi narrative, we already had that in the last cycle in 2017 as well. The DeFi sector is generally interesting and will always remain so. But the DeFi sector only really becomes interesting in a fully developed bull run. The higher we go with altcoins and so on, the more important DeFi projects become. Why is that? Because that's exactly when people prefer to go in this decentralized direction rather than cashing out their money at the bank and so on. Accordingly, DeFi projects will still have their time to shine, and yet Aave has performed very well so far. In the bear market, it hovered around $50, and we were definitely able to fight our way up from there. Aave is the only DeFi project that has over $1 billion in TVL across more than 4 chains. The growth over the past few years has been incredibly strong in terms of stablecoins, Delaware X, volume, loans, and so on. Just take a look at the TVL here. Absolutely incredible. Of course, it was already strong in the last cycle. We had a tough bear market here, but look at how we've developed since then. We're building up in an insane way here. Aave is still extremely undervalued compared to what they actually have on-chain and the kind of application they offer. A truly outstanding project. In terms of risk-reward ratio, it's still way too cheap. I mean, just look at it. In the last cycle, in terms of TVL, they peaked at 19 billion, but price-wise, they were twice as high as they are now. But right now, we've already far surpassed the previous TVL. We've expanded well in many different directions. And that's why I also believe that Aave still has plenty of room to grow, especially if things move toward the euphoria phase in this cycle. Because as I said, that's when these DeFi projects really start to get interesting. For Aave, based purely on chart analysis using the Elliott wave method, I see the following scenario. We had the 1 here, the 2, and the 3 would be at least $750. Then comes the corrective wave 4, and then wave 5. That means in this cycle I expect minimum price targets of $1,300 for Aave. These are the price targets I'm currently aiming for. With this on-chain data, with these improvements to the chain, and so on, in my view, this is 100% realistic. And then we have a project called Maple Finance. The ticker is 0. Maybe you've already heard of it. It's also completely under the radar, but still has a market cap of 550 million. It came out of nowhere. Here you can see on the chart. Okay, but it has performed really well. Now, of course, the thing is, people might complain again. Why are you only making the video now when the price has already gone up so much? Just take a look at the on-chain activity here. The project has been around since 2021, but look at the TVL, look at the growth. We've made so many % gains here in such a short time. It's unbelievable. Seriously, we've built up massively in terms of TVL. $1.5 billion in TVL. This is also a project that shows absolute dominance. It's incredibly impressive to build up so strongly in such a short time. That's why I definitely pay attention to things like this. Here too you can clearly see we're in a complete uptrend. As long as this uptrend remains intact, we still have some really big price targets ahead. I can't draw anything for you here from a technical analysis perspective because the project is simply too new. Still, this is a project you should definitely keep an eye on because as you can see yourself, from just 20 million TVL to $1.5 billion TVL in such a short time. That's incredibly impressive. This is also a good project and especially in relation to its market cap, still quite undervalued at the moment. And then we have Hyperlquid. I already talked about this project 2 months ago when it was at $13, $14, $15. I mentioned it in the videos back then as well, and I said this is a project I'm getting into. This is a project where I see great potential for the future, and since then we've already made over 100% gains. It's still a project I'm holding on to, and I have to say this project really has a future ahead of it. It's a decentralized exchange with an incredible amount of usage. I mean, this is a fresh project and is ranked 11th for a reason. Just take a look at what's happening here right now. Over $840 million per year just from trading fees. That's incredible. And as I said, it's a DeFi project, it's decentralized. This is something that's going to explode even more and have much greater use in a mature bull run. First, because there will be more trading volume, and second, because in a mature bull run, a lot more people will want to operate in a decentralized way. And that's where this project comes into play. And here, the next major catalyst, which also triggered the latest hype, is the Hyper EVM. That means we will be fully Ethereum compatible here, and of course that will open up entirely new doors for us. That's why this is also a project I'm keeping an eye on before we head into the next month. However, out of all the projects here, Hyperlquid is the one I would invest in the least right now, because we've already seen a stronger increase, and as I said, I made videos about it back when it was at $14 or $15 and was already so optimistic about this project back then. But you can see what I pay attention to when it comes to altcoins. I've shown you that TVL, meaning the money that's actually being used on the blockchain, is much more important than things like market cap, tokens, this or that. I look at how much real world use the project has and how that usage has grown over the past few months. And you can also see that when the usage increases as strongly as it did with Maple Finance, the price rises just as sharply. That's why on-chain activity is very important. That's the kind of thing I pay attention to and focus on with altcoins, because there are also projects like Cardano. They simply don't have much to offer in terms of on-chain activity or TVL, but they still go up, and sometimes they even rise rapidly. But these projects only rise purely because of hype. Accordingly, I look at where we have solid on-chain activity. If we have that, then of course it would be great if there was also some hype created around it. And if that happens, then definitely a safe bet. Because honestly, there are way too many projects in this market for us to just speculate on some random hype. That's why it's better to rely on on-chain activities. In my opinion, that's a much better approach. And at this point, friends, I want to sincerely thank you for watching. Feel free to let me know your thoughts. What do you think of these projects? Did you already know about them? And should I talk more often about projects that I'm currently keeping an eye on?